Okay, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the flood resource session. I want to give a little bit of update on some of the work that Greater Mankato Growth has been doing in terms of flood recovery. So we were excited to work to advocate to make sure that we were getting the disaster declaration we needed to make resources available to businesses and individuals in the community. Through those resources, the largest resource available to businesses is coming through the U.S. Small Business Administration. So we're going to start the conversation here today by bringing in Carl Dombek with the U.S. Small Business Administration. And then we wanted to highlight two additional resources for businesses. One is the consulting services available through the Small Business Development Center. And then the third is a program through Energy Smart at the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce that some businesses could take advantage of. And there are some grants potentially available for eligible businesses through that program. There's been a lot of conversation regarding FEMA assistance, and as a community, we've been fortunate to see FEMA assistance. However, that assistance is targeted towards residents of the community. And we've been informed that there are not funds available through FEMA that will directly impact businesses impacted. So we wanted to start the conversation today, highlight those programs that exist right here and now, and then let you know that Greater Mankato Growth is continuing to advocate to look at additional programs for businesses. Any additional programs that are released will likely require either legislative action at the state level or congressional action at the federal level to make new programs available. So working closely with Andy Wilkie and our partners at the state and federal level to see what can be made available. For the purposes of the conversation here today, we are recording this, so I want to make sure that those who are watching afterwards can see all of the questions that are asked. So I'm going to ask members of the audience, type your questions in chat, and then I will moderate those and read those for our presenters so that they can respond to those. And now I will introduce Carl Dombek with the U.S. Small Business Administration. Carl is a seasoned public affairs specialist with the SBA's Office of Disaster Recovery and Resilience, Field Operations Center East. He began his SBA career as a loan officer in SBA's Sacramento office following the Northridge earthquake of 1994. After a year of processing and reviewing loans, the agency drew on his experience as a former radio/TV reporter and moved him to a public relations/media relations role. He spent the next 5 years as a spokesperson for various agency offices from Sacramento to Dallas to Atlanta. After more than a decade working for private sector businesses, including General Electric, Carl adopted the mantle semi-retired in 2017 and came back to the SBA for the semi part of that phase. He has served with SBA on an as-needed basis ever since. Carl, I'll turn things over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Ryan. I appreciate that. I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in and share my screen here and get to the PowerPoint that we have put together for this, and hopefully it works as easily as it did in rehearsal. Okay, my screen sharing, and there we are. Okay, that's good. This is just the overview of our program. And before I really get started with this content, let me say we have 1 month until the filing deadline for physical damage claims. It's September 30th for the SBA, and that time, as you probably have experienced yourself, goes quickly. So if you have a business, a renter, a homeowner, a nonprofit organization that has had damage, encourage them to apply like now. The sooner the better, because once you're in the system, you're fine, but you want to get ahead of others who might be waiting till the last minute to get in line. Now, this is our mission statement. It's the official, crafted version. What it really boils down to is we make low-interest loans to help people, homeowners, renters, businesses, and nonprofit organizations to rebuild, recover, and become more resilient. And the resilience is a newer facet of our program, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Now, the disaster loan program is simply that. It's one program, low-interest disaster loans with up to 30-year repayment and a 1 year grace period for all of our loans. It's 1 year without payments, but also without interest accruing. So it is literally a grace period. And if you're unsure of whether you need or want the loan, apply and if get the approval, put the money in the bank, sit on it for 11 months, see where you are in maybe June of next year. And if you don't need it, pay it back without interest and you're fine. If you need it, it's a tool in your recovery toolkit. Now, as I said, we have one program, but there are many facets to that. And one is the physical disaster loan. We have physical loans for homeowners, for renters, and for businesses. For homeowners and renters, we have personal property coverage of up to $100,000. For real estate damage to a home, the limit is up to $500,000. And for businesses, for your real estate that you own or are responsible for, your inventory, machinery and equipment, furniture and fixtures, up to $2 million. And that could also include some economic damage. Now, the interest rates are set for the life of the loan, and we'll talk about that and exactly what they are coming up. Now, this is a map of the declared counties in Minnesota. The red counties are what are called primary counties, and in those counties, if you had physical damage, no matter what category of disaster survivor you are, you can apply for a low interest loan to repair those damages. In the yellow counties, if you are a business, that would be actually a small business specifically, or a nonprofit organization, and you had economic damage, you can apply for an economic injury disaster loan. Now, in the contiguous counties, which is what we call them, physical loans are not available. So if you had some damage, that's going to be between you and your insurance company, which we hope you have. And yet, if you're in the primary counties, you're certainly eligible to apply for a loan with the SBA. Now, the business loans are for, as I said, businesses and private nonprofit organizations, replacing real estate if you own it, leasehold improvements if you don't and are responsible for those improvements, inventory, machinery and equipment, furniture and fixtures. Small businesses and private nonprofits can also apply for economic injury disaster loans because if you're damaged, you certainly are not at full strength. But even if you're not, maybe your customers weren't able to get to you for a period of time and you saw business drop off. And now those ordinary and necessary operating expenses that you were having no problem meeting for before the disaster are getting a little tight, or maybe they're even in danger of becoming late. We don't want to see this become an economic disaster for you as well. So we have these low interest disaster loans for what we call EIDLs, EIDLs. Now, the maximum amount is $2 million. It may be a little confusing because that can be $2 million for physical damage, $2 million for economic injury, or some combination of the two. We're not going above $2 million unless you're what's called a major source of employment. And we could get into that, but it's a little bit wonkish. It's a very, very high percentage of the employment in the community comes through you. If that's the case, then we can waive the $2 million limit. Military reservist economic injury disaster loans are another category that's really not addressed in this disaster, so we'll just let that go for the moment. Home loans, as I said, homeowners can borrow up to $500,000 for repair to their real estate, and that includes landscaping. Home loans and renters can get up to $100,000 for personal property. And again, these are all, in fact, based on need. Unlike a mortgage where you come to us and say, we want $350,000 to buy this wonderful new home, we look at your need. We look at what the total damage is. We look at what you may have received from FEMA, if anything, if you're a homeowner or renter. And as Ryan said, FEMA has nothing for businesses. What you may have received from your insurance, and then we look at the gap. The gap is what we can address with a low interest loan. Now, unlike a bank loan as well, we can adjust this as we go forward. In times of disaster, we see business people in the trades, for example, raising their rates because they've got more business than they can do. They can afford to charge more. Oftentimes they do, which means the original estimate is low. You're going to need more money. We can come up back, take another look at it, and potentially increase your loan. If you're able to get some of the work done yourself, we can also decrease the loan so it's less that you have to repay. So it's a very flexible kind of loan. We work with you throughout the process to make sure that we're meeting your needs as we go along. Now, the interest rates for this disaster are set right here. There's the disaster term, no credit available elsewhere. will entitle you to these low interest rates. The 2.688% for homeowners and renters, 3.25 for nonprofits, and 4% for businesses. Economic injury loans for businesses, 4%, 3.25% for nonprofits. Now, there is a side that on my screen, the thumbnails are covering, it says credit available elsewhere. That is probably the worst shortening of a term that I have seen because it really encompasses four facets. It's not that you have a little room on your home equity line of credit or on your MasterCard. What it means is you have credit available elsewhere in the amount necessary to recover from the disaster at reasonable terms and conditions and without a hardship. Now, if you've made repairs to your home or business and put those on your high interest credit cards with MasterCards and Visas running nearly 20% or more these days, and big box department store and home repair cards running over 30%, that could be considered a hardship. So we would not consider the fact that you put this on your credit card showing that you have credit available elsewhere. We could also find you have no credit available elsewhere, make you a low interest loan, which, by the way, you can use to pay off your disaster related expenses at a much lower interest rate and have that 1 year grace period as well. So if you've already made the repairs, understanding it's almost 2 months since the incident period, and many people may have, if you've made those repairs and used high interest money, apply and use our low interest money to pay that off. As I mentioned, interest rates are fixed for the term of the loan. Most disaster loans are made at the lower rate. Last I saw, 95% of them were. There are no payments or interest for the first year, which we've mentioned. Loan terms are generally 15 or 30 years. We set the terms based on your financial situation. If you're only borrowing $10,000 and it looks like you could repay that without a hardship in 7 years, we're going to ask you to do that. And frankly, if you're a good business person and you're borrowing $10,000, you don't want to take 30 years to pay that off. That would be paying more interest than really is necessary. However, if you have to, if that's what we have to do to make it affordable, we can do that. We do have that latitude. SBA disaster loan funds, unlike what we euphemistically call regular SBA, come directly from the U.S. Treasury. You don't work through a participating bank like you would for a 7A loan or a microloan or what have you. Instead, you apply directly on our disaster assistance portal, sba.gov/disaster. There's no cost to apply. There's no obligation to take that loan if you are offered one, if you decide it's not right for you, or if they offer you more than you really want to obligate for. If, let's say, you're offered $50,000 and you don't want to go over $25,000 and pledge collateral, we can look at that too. As long as there's going to be the money to make the necessary repairs from some source, and we're not going to be worried about the fact that it's less than what we think you need because you're a prudent business person, you know the sources of your funding, and you're just going to tap something else. So that's fine. You can have an existing disaster loan. Minnesota has not been one of the states where we see a disaster every year like clockwork. But if you perhaps do have one from a previous disaster, that's okay, as long as you can afford the payment on the second one. And unfortunately, we can't consolidate those loans. So that's going to mean 2 payments a month instead of 1. Eligibility. Your damaged property has to be in one of those declared counties that I showed you earlier. Credit history has to be acceptable to SBA. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it does have to be acceptable. And I would say if you have a federal obligation that you are behind on, whether that's taxes or student loans or what have you, go to the organization that is appropriate, get a workout agreement in place before you come to us, because that'll show good faith that you're willing to stand up and say, yes, this is my obligation. I'm going to be good for it. You have to be able to show repayment ability. Hazard insurance is required on all secured loans, and those are over $25,000, as I've mentioned. And if you're in a special flood hazard area, you have to, by law, have flood insurance, even if your home is or was previously paid off, home or business. Now, we mentioned our resource partners. We're going to hear from the SBDC in just a moment. They are a great resource, as are the Women's Business Centers, SCORE, and the Veterans Business Outreach Centers. They can help with a lot of the facets of a disaster loan, particularly in filling out the application or filling out a request for reconsideration if you were declined. Some years ago, I came across a fellow who had a AAA 4-diamond bed and breakfast in Wilmington, North Carolina, that had been running for 8 years. So if you're that high in the food chain to have 4 AAA diamonds and you've been running 8 years, you're doing something right. Uh, for some reason, we said no the first go around. I went and met with him and said, you and your accountant go to the SBDC, have numbers people talk to numbers people, figure out what they need that they didn't get the first time, and go back to them for a second bite at the apple. And that's available to everybody, a reconsideration. And if you don't get the right answer or the answer you want the second time, there is a right to a third appeal. The timelines are a bit shorter, 30 days for the third appeal, but you do have a right to say, look, we'd like somebody else to take a look at it. And at the SBA, when you have an appeal, we do not give it to the original loan officer. We find a new loan officer and a new supervisor. So it's not like me saying, oh, it's Carl again, we know him. No, it's fresh eyes both times. So you've actually got 6 pairs of eyes looking at this if you go all the way through the process. And ideally, somebody's going to find some way to make that loan, because our mission is not to find an excuse to say no, it's to find a reason and a way we can say yes. Pardon me, I'm going to grab a sip of coffee. Thank you. Step one, obviously you apply. You apply for the disaster loan, and you can do that, as I mentioned earlier, at sba.gov/disaster. You can also go to lending.sba.gov, or you can go to a business recovery center or a disaster recovery center around the state. Now, we don't have one in every county, but we do have some in the more heavily impacted counties. We got one in Mankato at the Justice Center, 401 Carver Road. There's a business recovery center and a disaster recovery center up in Waterville. I think those are the two. Well, there's one in Jackson as well at the Minnesota West College on West Street. The others are up in the northeast corner of the state, so they'd be a bit of a drive. You don't want to do that. Apply directly. The physical deadline is 60 days from the date of the declaration. We're now at about 30 days. So time is, as I said earlier, growing short. We will conduct a verification of damage, because all of our loans are based on unmet needs. Physical damage might require a visit to the property, whether that's the business or a home, might not. We're getting much better at looking at pictures, which now, of course, have the date and time stamp on the pictures, so we know they are contemporary and might be able to be relied upon. If we have to send an advisor or a loss verifier out, we'll do it on an appointment basis. Nobody's going to just show up and say, hi, I'm here. But even when you see someone on the appointment basis, ask for a government ID. Don't go buy a business card or a shirt. Look for the government ID, and you'll recognize it. It's got the appropriate language on it. It'll have the person's picture on it, because you just want to be sure that you're protecting yourself and your property. Once we've looked at the verification, it'll go to a loan officer. They'll do the numbers. If we can offer you a loan, we will. And then the closing follows. And shortly after we get the closing documents back, you'll get your first disbursement if it's a larger loan. If it's under 25,000, it'll be the disbursement. As I said, you can go to sba.gov/disaster, and these are a couple of the panels you'll see. The one on the left-hand side is where you apply, and it's a very straightforward process, very simple. A lot of screens, a lot of different screens, so don't be intimidated, but it's nothing that you as a business person either don't know off the top of your head or have at your fingertips. It's just very basic information. And then once you've done that, you will establish an account in that process, and then you can look at the panel on the right, log into your account, see where you are, look at your balance, maybe arrange to make a payment, get more information there. So that's a tool that's available to you, as is calling our 800 number at 800-659-2955, or you can email disastercustomerservice@sba.gov. Now, here are the office locations that I mentioned earlier. I believe this is the most current of the locations. BRC is a business recovery center. We have people who are well-versed in business lending. If you're an individual homeowner or renter, we're not going to turn you away if you show up there. We'll help you. Disaster recovery centers are joint with FEMA and the state. They have maybe a few more resources. If you're a homeowner or a renter, we do recommend that you register with FEMA also. But you can go to a disaster recovery center, register with FEMA, talk to an SBA representative, possibly talk to a state representative about whatever is available through them. And then the MDRCs, it's our shorthand. It means Mobile Disaster Recovery Center. It simply means they're only going to be there a couple of weeks rather than until further notice. So with that, I can take any questions that you might have, and we'll move forward.
Carl,
Hey,
I'm going to give people some time to write questions in chat. I'll remind people again, if you do have a question, please write that in chat. I'll read it aloud in the group. But I do want to start off with one to prompt things, and then I'll give people more time afterwards and again at the end of the presentations. You talked about if a loan comes in that's higher than what someone might need and they don't want to put up collateral and reducing that to 25,000. Two questions on that.
sure.
One is if somebody has property that is already collateral with an existing bank loan,
Mhm.
how can they use that property again as collateral for the SBA loan as a second position? And
Yes.
then the second is if someone, say, receives a loan amount for 150,000 and only thinks they need 100,000. So we're not changing the collateral process. What is the best action for that individual?
Well, first of all, let's go back to the collateral. Yes, we can take something that's already got a lien on it. We do not insist on being in first position. We subordinate frequently, so as long as we're in there somewhere, we're fine. 150,000 offered versus 100,000 needed. I would say stick with 150,000 because we don't disperse it all at once. We disperse the first 25,000. When you come back to us and show progress to about $20,000 worth of that 25,000, then we'll disperse the next chunk, and that may be another 25,000. So you've got a few installments to go, shall we say? And if you get close to the 100,000 and you're almost done, then yeah, you're fine. You did only need 100,000. You can tell us, and we'll reduce the loan from 150 to $100,000 and make whatever adjustments are necessary, whether that's the amount of the payment or the loan term to make it appropriate for the amount that you finally wind up borrowing.
Perfect. I received a question. Can you please provide the deadline again for physical damage and for the economic injury disaster loan?
Sure. The economic injury, I have to look up. Physical damage for the SBA is September 30th. It's coming up in a little over a month. The FEMA deadline is September 27th, so they're a little bit different than us if you are a homeowner or renter. But again, the advice to register as quickly as you can or as soon as you can still holds. For the economic injury deadline, it's April 29th of next year. And part of the reason we give 9 months for that is because economic injury often takes longer to manifest. You might be cruising along pretty well and thinking, okay, it's going to come back in a month. Well, no, a month, 2 months, 3 months go by. Or you're thinking you're going to use your own resources rather than look at borrowing, and that's certainly a prudent thing to do. But at some point, you're going to get to a situation where your reserves are as low as you feel comfortable having them. So at that point, it might be 6 months down the road, maybe 7 or 8, and you can still come to us and say, it hasn't happened as quickly as I hoped. Looks like I'm going to have to take out a loan to keep meeting my payables until things do get back to normal. And again, with an economic injury loan, we have until April 29th. And that is so whether you have a physical component or not. So if you have a physical loan on your business because you had some damage to it and you're going to try to weather the economic portion, that's fine. It's not going to change anything as far as the deadline just because you have the physical loan.
I received another question here that came in directly to me saying individual received direct FEMA assistance at their home for physical damage, but their small business is not eligible for the same assistance. Is there simply no direct assistance payments, grants, or forgivable loans available for businesses from the state or federal level?
Not as far as I know. The only
Okay.
forgivable loans were back dealing with COVID, and of course, that's hopefully a distant memory by now. But no, we have no forgivable loans, and to my understanding, FEMA does not have any grants for businesses, just homeowners and renters.
Okay. Um, the other things I see in chat right now are resources. So I will, as we post the recorded version, I'll share those resources alongside it.
Mhm.
Oh, I have another question. What field offices are currently open? They know Albert Lee opened this week and are wondering if Jackson and Waterville are still open.
Yeah, Waterville definitely is open, and I believe, yes, Jackson is still showing as open. They'll be closed Jackson is closed Saturday and Sunday. Waterville is closed on Sunday, and of course, we'll all be closed on Labor Day.
Yep. And then it's my understanding, and Carl, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the Blue Earth County Justice Center, that disaster recovery center is staffed by FEMA. There is always a FEMA representative there for homeowners and renters. Businesses can stop there, but I have been told that there is not always an SBA representative there. There may or may not be a representative, but in Waterville, there will always be an SBA representative there. Is that accurate?
I can't say that there would, I don't know why there would not be an SBA representative at any location,
Okay.
because we are joint with them, but certainly in Waterville. And there are two facilities that are literally a block apart. So our Business Recovery Center is north of the City Hall by a block. And the center is, actually it's in the senior center, but it's just a different door to City Hall, if you know Waterville. And there are certainly representatives from SBA, FEMA, and state at that center.
And then one more question, how long will those offices be open?
Well, it's dependent on the traffic, actually. We work closely with the state and the local areas, and if as long as we have traffic, could conceivably be all the way up to the deadline. If things slack off, we'll reevaluate and certainly announce any closures that we're going to be going through with in advance, so people aren't caught, without notice.
Okay. Well, perfect. Well, thank you. I will turn things over to our next presenter, and then if more questions come in, we may have some more Q&A time at the end of the webinar here today. So with that, our next presenter is Mike Hahn with the Small Business Development Center. So Mike is a builder of entrepreneurs and communities with an extensive background in small business development and downtown revitalization. He is the founder of the Urban Main Street Initiative in Waterloo, Iowa. Hahn later joined the staff at the University of Northern Iowa as a program manager, overseeing the operations of a business accelerator, incubating new businesses within the community. Eventually promoted to regional director of the university's Small Business Development Center, he managed one of the busiest centers in Iowa, serving over 800 businesses annually. Returning to downtown revitalization, Hahn spearheaded efforts in Fargo, creating the first self-taxing business improvement district in North Dakota. Currently, he is the regional director of the SBDC at Minnesota State University, Mankato. In 2020, the Small Business Administration recognized the Mankato SBDC with the Center of Excellence Award. Mike, I'll turn things over to you.
Thank you, Brian. And that's a pretty extensive bio, and thank you for reading that. Just some things I like to just kind of point out for folks. We are the Small Business Development Center, and essentially we're a partnership. We have three very valuable partners. We have the SBA, the state of Minnesota. Also, we are hosted by Minnesota State University, Mankato. And in addition to that, we also have a lot of community partners, be it county government, city governments, and local financial institutions across the region. We serve the South Central region of Minnesota. And basically what we provide is no fee business consultation services. Now, one thing that I know that's been talked about extensively is grants. Are there grants available for this disaster? And as Ryan indicated earlier, there are not. And once we mention loan, as Carl mentioned, with the SBA, people automatically have a tendency to kind of put up their walls and say, well, I'm not interested because I don't want to be servicing any debt. What we encourage everyone to do right now, because if you take a look at what happened in our economy over the past 5 years, especially when we have such things as the pandemic, and in addition, we have this natural disaster with the flooding, we advise all businesses to come into the SBA and just essentially do a business checkup. And what I mean by that is making sure, that your finances are in place, making sure that your business plan is updated. One thing I wanted to mention that Carl reinforces that the economic injury portion, the deadline for this isn't until next spring. So it's April 29th of 2025. So we don't know what's going to happen between now and next spring, okay? So this gives us an opportunity to work with you as a business owner to say, okay, I got all my work, got all my finances together. I know where I'm sitting at financially. What is it that we can take a look at? And also to kind of gauge as far as what's going to be happening over the next 9 months in our local economy as well. Hopefully we won't have anything like major snowstorms or major cold snaps, or even potentially, maybe even another drought. But those are things that we need to take into consideration, and also we need to evaluate. This is a great opportunity, because when we take a look at this, if we need to apply for an economic injury loan, it's low interest rates. The amortization period is 15 to 30 years, and we can work with the SBA, and we can help you through that business process as far as getting your business up and on board. One thing I want to point out is that, yes, there was flooding, but there was also major delays. The flooding caused major delays in road construction projects. We also had major railway and arterial, as far as highways, that were closed for numerous days. Those were all impacted. Those are all impacts as far as negative impacts to businesses. Even in some cases in North Mankato, we had Belgrade, which had more than enough traffic. And then some people are stating that, hey, my business was affected because of the fact that there was nothing but traffic jams on Belgrade. There's a possibility that might be considered as economic impact as well. So what I encourage all businesses to do, don't do small business in a vacuum. We know you're busy. We have a terrific team of consultants. If they can't meet with you during the business day, they will meet with you virtually at night or on weekends as well. So utilize those services, see what we can do, see where you're at. On this financial side, I have a retired CPA who's awesome to work with. I have a current CPA who's awesome to work with. I also have a former banker that is very well versed with SBA products who's awesome to work with. If you are in a situation that you need help with your data, to retrieve your data, I know that we're almost 60 days past this incident, but there are people who are having issues as far as retrieving data. We have someone who's in information technology, cybersecurity, that can help you with that. And as I stated earlier, there's no fees for this. This is a service that we provide. And even if you're in a situation that we have not come across before, we have the resources of the University of Minnesota State Mankato, also the resources of the community that we can pull in as well. So as I stated earlier, don't do business in a vacuum. You don't need to be doing this alone. If you don't have time during the day, we can help you in those off hours on weekends or whatever. What I'm going to do is put our website. The best way to get a hold of us is through our website. I'm going to put that into the chat, and you go to the upper right-hand corner. You'll see it right on the homepage. Apply for services there. And within 48 hours, we will have you set up with a consultant. And that's kind of where I'm at, Brian. I'm going to kind of wrap it up there.
Perfect. And just for those who might be watching afterwards, that website is myminnesotabusiness.com. So a little easy to remember, but we'll make sure that we're providing that link to you when we're distributing this video as well. Any questions for Mike? And I'll give some people some time to write any questions I see in the chat. I will note that at Greater Mankato Growth, we've been very happy and excited about the partnership with the Small Business Development Center. We regularly refer businesses to the Small Business Development Center, and we hear great things, or businesses let us know that the SBDC consultants have helped them start and grow their business, have helped them identify loan programs. I do hear from small business development consultants on issues that their clients are having, and at times when there are grant programs that might be available, the SBDC has worked with individuals to help them secure those grants. We worked closely with the SBDC when we released the Main Street Economic Revitalization Program, and those consultants worked closely with individuals who were applying for those grants and had a lot of success there. So if you haven't met with them, free business consulting, where else are you going to get that?
And I know that our current location, we're in the middle of a reconstruction zone with the North Riverfront streetscape project. But we're seeing light at the end of the tunnel here. Our section of the street should be opening relatively soon. So we are located off campus. We're in the heart of the business district in downtown Mankato at 424 Riverfront Drive. Just come up to the second floor and we can help you there as well.
Okay. Not seeing any questions come in. And again, I may have some time for questions at the end of the conversation today, but I'll keep things moving and I'll turn things over to Patrick Deal with the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce. Patrick has worked with the Minnesota Chamber for 7.5 years, conducting energy assessments, managing the Energy Smart program, and recently being promoted to Environmental Sustainability Director to oversee all technical assistance sustainability programs. In total, his team meets with about 1,000 businesses per year for sustainability technical assistance. Patrick, I'll turn things over to you.
Thank you, Ryan, and good morning, everyone. Screen going here. So I am here to talk this morning about a grant program that Energy Smart, one of my sustainability programs, offers. It's not really designed to be flood relief, but it is adjacent. So when I was chatting with Ryan, it seemed to make sense to bring this into the there we go. So a little bit about our program at the Chamber. It's originated in 2008. No cost energy consultations for businesses with Excel and Centerpoint Energy are our current kind of contract agreements. If you've got maybe Benco or somebody else in the Mankato area, feel free to reach out. There's contact information at the end of this presentation. We can figure out a way to work with you. It's just those are the ones that are the easiest for us. Essentially, what the team does is technical assistance for small businesses. We're identifying and implementing energy efficiency improvements. So as you're making capital to your business, replacing HVAC, lighting, water heating, anything that uses energy, we can help identify sources and help you evaluate quotes, things like that. Larger businesses, manufacturers, or facilities with some complexity, our aim is to refer you to programming that already exists within utility. There's some really nice subsidized programs available out there that can dig a little bit deeper than a no-cost program can. So big or small, we have a way of kind of giving some technical assistance. And then matching grant program, since about 2015, we've worked with businesses on funds. So you can see a little bit of our performance on the right-hand side there. It's about eliminating just shy of 4,000 homes energy use or planting 500,000 trees. So our aim is to help businesses save energy, save on their costs. It's the kind of major capital improvements. So a little picture of our grant making since 2015. We've done just shy of 550 grant awards. Geographic specific grants, we have some partners that we have kind of funds available through a municipality. So we've done 112 of those. And then we recently were awarded a technical assistance grant through the REAP program. If anyone here is familiar with that, that started last September. So far we've done 3 successful applications for about 160. So just over $2 million for our history of grant funding to businesses. So to dig into it, what is it? Like I said, again, this is adjacent to the flood relief program, but it's not designed necessarily for that. So reach out. Again, there's contact info and see if the project you're thinking of qualifies. We can make some exceptions where it makes sense. So what's available? It's up to $5,000. They're a matching grant. So we use the utility rebate and we'll match for lighting projects about half to 60% of the rebate, or for other technologies that you can see on that right-hand side, 4 or 5 times the rebate, up to $5,000. The funds are available for energy efficient equipment purchases. So anything that uses energy and earns a utility rebate. We do need pre-approval for the projects. I know since we're kind of far along in this recovery process. Some of those might be already purchased or things on order. Again, just reach out and we'll see, and kind of we can make exceptions where it makes sense for things. And then the equipment, yeah, must earn a utility rebate, and it has to meet minimum efficiency requirements that are listed on the side here. So we require, since it is offering additional funds above utility incentives, we require efficiencies to be a little bit higher, since most of this equipment is major purchases that are going to last 20 to 25 years. It sets you up for a good long-term position on lowest energy cost possible, which is the point of the grant, to motivate those projects that save the most energy. And the grants are paid to the business after the utility rebate has been issued. So typically when we work with a business, it's about 6 weeks after the invoice has been submitted, we can mail you a check for the money. I understand the slides will be kind of sent out and the presentation's recorded. So again, the efficiency requirements are on the right-hand side, but always just reach out if you have questions. And then Rural Energy for America program. I think recently the Rural Development Office, federal USDA, redrew their qualification maps. And my understanding is that Mankato used to not be eligible, and they are eligible now. It seems like they broke North and North Mankato and Mankato separately. So the typical threshold is cities under 50,000 population. And my understanding is they broke this apart. So Mankato is eligible for this program. It's up to $500,000 in grants. It's for projects that reduce energy consumption or historical consumption or install renewables. The match is 50 to 25% of the project cost. We're nearing the end of a 6 application cycle here at the end of September. So I put 25 in there because we have not seen what they're going to do for the application periods that follow the end of September deadline. Deadlines are quarterly. You can't incur costs before the application is submitted. And then the installations adjacent to energy equipment aren't eligible for funds. So like ductwork, major electrical, it's just the systems themselves that save energy. So again, adjacent to flood relief, but not necessarily designed for it. My energy team offers technical assistance for applying and getting your energy assessment done for these applications. So we make it as easy as possible. But that's for certain businesses only. So again, reach out because we have a narrow focus that we're allowed to use our technical assistance grant on. So just reach out if you have something that you may be working on that might qualify, and we can chat through it with you. I would say this is a long and intricate application process. It's not a great fit for projects with deadlines. I have had many hangups along the way on certain projects. There's a lot of T's to cross and I's to dot. So this is something, if you're thinking of a future improvement and you've got a little bit of time and you can maybe sit on your application or your project for a few months to wait for a review period to see if you're awarded the funds or not, that's the best use of this program. There's geographic qualification, as I mentioned earlier, and it is a competitive application review. So my team can help weigh project to see if it's a good fit for the program, as Minnesota has typically spent all of their REAP budget. So it's actually a pretty competitive program. It's a points-based system. So you have to score a lot of points to float to the top of the pile. And we have a good sense of what is competitive and what is not. So we can help weigh that before we get into the nitty-gritty and the paperwork. So how to apply? The main thing with either the Energy Smart grant or the REAP grant is that things can't be purchased or committed to before the application submission. So again, we might be kind of running into some headwinds on the flood recovery, but again, just reach out and we'll at least weigh your project and see what you're working on. So Alex Christensen is my program manager on the Energy Smart team. In the application steps, reach out to Alex. We'll need an equipment quote after a conversation to see if the project's a good fit. We'll obtain a grant pre-approval, host an on-site assessment. You'll install your equipment. We'll submit the rebate and receive the grant funds. So as long as things are moving ahead, the program moves as fast as you move to get your funds reimbursed. The only major delay is waiting for the utility to issue the rebate, and then the check gets mailed. So it's a pretty light program, and we'll handle most of the paperwork and technical assistance for you. So it's a nice little assistance program. That's really all that I have. Keeping it pretty brief. The main thing is reach out to Alex on the slides, and we'll have conversations with you about what projects may not be a good fit, and get your application in if it is a good fit. So happy to take any questions.
Patrick, can I have you put Alex's email in chat, please?
Absolutely.
And then
Yep.
I wanted to highlight, as Patrick noted, we might be far into the process, but we have been trying to turn over every stone that we could to find any sort of grant funds available to businesses. And Patrick notes that this program is adjacent to flood relief. It's not a flood relief program. But the reason I approached the Minnesota Chamber on this is it's very possible that someone might already need to replace some of this type of equipment as part of their flood relief. So if that's something that's going to be in play already, let's make sure we're looking at any potential grant programs that can help with that. I did have a question come into chat already, and it says, does someone have to be a chamber member to access your service?
They do not. So our agreements with Xcel Energy and CenterPoint Energy allow any business to participate in the program, which includes the grant. If you have, say, Benco or another utility and the project is using that utility, membership is generally required, but we do the maximum grant amount for that for those businesses for members is $7,000. So typically your membership mostly gets paid through the grant, and you're up about $1,000 in the end. So so like I said, reach out, because we have ways to make it work, and we can chat that through on an individual basis.
Any other questions or additional questions for any of our presenters today? I always like to give a minute or two here just to see if anyone happens to be typing something up. Otherwise, we don't necessarily need to use the entire hour, and we'll have everyone's contact information when we share this information out afterwards, so that you can reach out directly with any additional questions, or always reach out to a staff member at Greater Mankato Growth. I'll put my contact information in chat, as well as Jake Reinhardt, our economic development specialist. And if you reach out to either of us, we can help make sure that you're getting connected with the resource providers we heard from today.
And Ryan, if I can just jump in for a moment and accentuate something that Mike also mentioned. Please, if you have any questions or any doubt at all, apply for SBA disaster assistance. Is no obligation to take it if it's offered, but it's a nice tool to have in your recovery toolkit. And as of close of business yesterday, we've approved almost $2.8 million in loans. So we're out there getting money out to people who need it, and we'd like to do as much as the need is. We want to meet the need, and yet we can't meet it if you don't apply. So please do so, especially if you have physical damage. Bear in mind, you only have a month left to get that application to us.
Also, Ryan, just to kind of jump on what Carl stated, if you run into a situation, if you have a challenge as far as getting that loan process, or if you have any issues as far as appealing, please work with us from the SBDC. We have a direct line of communication to the SBA, so we can help you maneuver through those challenges as well.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone, for joining the call today or watching the webinar afterwards if we've shared this out. We wish you a great rest of your day and a good flood recovery. Thank you.